As I prepared to head back to my hometown to give birth, I couldn't believe my ears when I asked, and my mother-in-law with a smirk snapped, "Why don't you just stay there forever? I don't want to see your freeloading face again." Her harsh words hurt, but I managed to keep my cool and responded calmly, "All right, take care then. My name is Michelle, a 32-year-old professional. I've been in a relationship with Kevin for 3 years, which began at a party over our mutual love for music. After swapping numbers, we started spending our evenings chatting about everything from our favorite songs to workplace dilemmas, usually over drinks at the local bar. Time spent with Kevin was always delightful, and it seemed to fly by. Before long, we became a couple, and I've never felt more content in life. Despite our demanding jobs, we treasure our weekends together. The thought of seeing Kevin at the end of the week pushes me to work harder and be more productive. Our relationship has been a significant boost to my career, providing both support and motivation. After a year together, we took a significant step and moved in together, both of us serious about our future and considering marriage. Living together brought us closer, helping us understand each other's habits and idiosyncrasies. Now, a year into our cohabitation, my desire to marry him is stronger than ever, and I eagerly await his proposal, though I sense he wants to choose the perfect moment. Then, out of the blue, Kevin invited me to dinner at an upscale restaurant. It wasn't a special occasion, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this could be the moment. After work, I arrived at the restaurant feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. When I saw him, I noticed he seemed even more anxious than me. Despite his palpable anxiety, seeing Kevin so nervous strangely calmed my nerves. His intense but awkward greeting even drew a quiet chuckle from me. As we progressed through our meal, Kevin's nervousness was evident, and as we finished our main course, he softly called my name, Michelle. His direct, earnest gaze made me a bit apprehensive. "Michelle, you're the most wonderful person, and I want to cherish you forever. I hope you feel the same about me. So, will you marry me?" His heartfelt words accompanied the presentation of a ring. My response was instinctive and joyful. "Yes, I can't wait to start our life together." With our engagement confirmed, I was overwhelmed with happiness. However, the bliss soon gave way to the busyness of life. We had to meet each other's families, organize family gatherings, and start planning our wedding. Juggling all this with our demanding jobs was a challenge, but Kevin and I managed to carve out time to move forward with our plans. When I introduced Kevin to my parents, they immediately liked him, impressed by his sincerity and warmth. Their approval meant the world to me, and I was grateful they embraced our decision to marry. However, the visit to Kevin's parents took an unexpected turn. Upon meeting me, Kevin's mother bluntly remarked, "Kevin's fiancé, you seem rather plain." I was taken aback by her harsh words. Before I could respond, Kevin quickly jumped in. "Mom, what are you saying? She's the woman I've chosen." His tone was defensive. "I'm just being honest," his mother retorted. Kevin's father then intervened, trying to ease the tension. "Enough, Susan. That's uncalled for." Despite Kevin and his father's efforts to defend me, I couldn't easily shake off the hurt caused by his mother's words. Later, Kevin apologized. "Michelle, I'm sorry about my mom. She's always been straightforward, sometimes too much so. I've never been quite comfortable with it either," Kevin admitted, surprising me with his candor. "So please don't let her words affect you. If she says anything out of line after we're married, just tell me immediately. I'll take care of it," he promised with sincerity. His reassurance eased my worries significantly. From the start of our relationship, Kevin had shown a protective streak, even during our initial introduction to his parents. However, my anxiety lingered, especially with the upcoming family gathering. I couldn't help but fear that Kevin's mother, Susan, might disrespect my parents as well. Despite my concerns, Kevin assured me he would manage the situation delicately. I had also prepped my parents about Susan's formidable personality, which they were somewhat prepared for from previous descriptions. The day of the family meeting finally came. and my nerves were fraught for a whole different set of reasons. "Hello, I'm Kevin's dad. It's a pleasure to meet you," greeted Jack warmly, extending a hand to my parents. "We're Michelle's mom and dad," my parents responded politely, maintaining a friendly atmosphere. They exchanged pleasantries with Jack, but Susan remained aloof, seating herself and ordering a drink without engaging. "I'll take her red wine. Looks like we'll need a bit of a drink to make this interesting," she remarked casually, her comment casting an uncomfortable pall over the gathering. My parents, stunned by Susan's blunt demeanor, were momentarily speechless. Both Jack and Kevin, clearly annoyed by Susan's behavior, quickly apologized for her rudeness. As the meal progressed, my parents and Jack hit it off, engaging in friendly conversation. Susan, focusing mainly on her meal, remained quiet initially. However, as she drank more, she began to interject rudely into the conversations. "A government job may be stable, but the pay isn't anything to brag about. Kevin's marrying into such boring people," she blurted, becoming increasingly disruptive as the evening wore on. "If they have kids, they'll probably be just as dull," Susan commented sharply, clearly crossing a line with her remarks. "That's enough," Jack interjected, his voice laden with anger. "You need to leave now." Susan left reluctantly, muttering about how she was just being honest. Jack escorted her outside and arranged for a cab to take her home. When he returned to the restaurant, he and Kevin apologized once more for Susan's behavior. I was thankful that we had reserved a private room. Susan had proven to be a greater challenge than we had anticipated. At our wedding, she was noticeably more reserved, likely due to Jack's stern warning that she must behave impeccably or face serious consequences. He had even hinted at divorce if she embarrassed them again. Thankfully, she held back her comments and the wedding proceeded flawlessly, much to my relief. Thus, Kevin and I embarked on our married life with earnest enthusiasm. We had a wonderful relationship filled with bliss as we shared household responsibilities evenly, ensuring neither of us felt overburdened. Kevin was an excellent cook, which was a delightful bonus. On days he was late from work but still took on the role of chef, we cooked together, making our time as a happy couple even more enjoyable. Kevin made it a point to visit his family home alone as much as possible, being mindful of both Susan's and my feelings. Thanks to this, I was spared any direct snide remarks or confrontations from Susan, and I deeply appreciated Kevin's thoughtful consideration during this time. However, tragedy struck when Jack suddenly fell ill and passed away. Kevin and I rushed to the hospital, but we arrived too late. "Dad!" Kevin exclaimed in disbelief, his voice breaking with grief. Jack's death hit him hard, and Susan was visibly distraught too, crying out, "How could you leave me like this?" Despite my strained relationship with Susan, I couldn't help but feel a profound sympathy for her loss. At that moment, I couldn't help but empathize with Susan's profound grief. We mourned the loss of Jack together, a man who had always shown me nothing but kindness. In the days that followed, Kevin and I found ourselves deeply involved in the funeral arrangements while navigating our sadness. Kevin took the lead in organizing the proceedings, and I did everything I could to support him during this challenging period. The funeral went smoothly, and it felt like we had given Jack a fitting send-off. Gradually, life began to return to its usual rhythm for Kevin and me. It took some time, but we eventually adjusted to life without Jack. Kevin seemed particularly determined to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose. However, just as we were finding our new normal, an unexpected challenge appeared. "Kevin, please, I need help," Susan said as she suddenly showed up at our doorstep, catching us off guard. "Mom, what's wrong?" Kevin asked, clearly disturbed by her uncharacteristic demeanor. Her voice softened as she replied, "Since your father passed, I've been feeling terribly lonely. Nothing seems to taste right anymore. I just wanted to see the faces of my only family, my son and his wife." Her words struck a chord. Her vulnerability was palpable. "Could I stay with you for a little while?" she asked, her voice tinged with desperation. Kevin and I were taken aback by her request. "I feel like I'll be crushed by loneliness if things continue this way," she pleaded. We hesitated but reasoned that a short stay might not be harmful. Susan seemed so fragile, and we doubted she had the energy to be hostile towards me. Thus, we agreed to let her stay, and surprisingly, Susan adapted well. She even began to help with household chores. "Staying in your home is the least I can do. Thank you, you're lifesavers," she expressed gratefully. Both Kevin and I appreciated her efforts, and life seemed manageable, almost pleasant. However, after about 5 months, Susan slowly began to revert to her old habits. "Michelle, aren't you planning to quit your job? Isn't it normal for wives to stop working?" she casually remarked one day, signaling a return to her previous ways. "You've been working all this time," I began, but Susan's tone quickly grew harsher, a clear sign she was reverting to her old self. Turning to Kevin, I said, "Okay, we need to talk to Mom and ask her to consider moving back to her hometown." When Kevin broached the subject with Susan, her response took us by surprise. "I've already sold the family home," she confessed. Kevin and I exchanged shocked glances. "Mom, why would you do that without discussing it with us?" "That's our family home. I inherited it from Dad," Kevin said, disbelief coloring his voice. "Selling it was my decision," Susan defended herself, but her casual dismissal stung. "You should have at least informed us," Kevin countered, his frustration evident. "I forgot. Sorry, now I have nowhere else to go, so please don't kick me out," Susan pleaded. Kevin and I were left speechless, struggling to digest this new reality. As we were trying to come to terms with the situation, another unexpected development occurred. I discovered I was pregnant. Kevin and I were overjoyed. We had been hoping for a child, but were almost ready to give up due to our age. This was truly wonderful news. However, the joy of our growing family was tempered by the prospect of dealing with Susan during the pregnancy. Her complaints had resumed. She argued with Kevin. "Why do I have to cook for you too? I'm only staying here because of Kevin, not you." Traditionally, it's the wife who handles all the housework. Kevin explained that while Susan would cook only for herself and him and do her laundry, she stubbornly avoided any chores related to me. Despite Kevin's reprimands, she showed remorse only temporarily before slipping back into old habits. At my wit's end and feeling the need for a break, I decided to start my maternity leave early and return to my parents' home for some peace. When I discussed this with Kevin, he suggested a solution we both eventually agreed upon. As we made our plans, I informed Susan about our decision and began preparing for the move. "You're going back home to give birth?" she asked, a sharp edge to her voice. "Yes, I believe it's the best decision for safer childbirth, and it also means I'll be leaving household duties behind for a while. Kevin supports this decision," I explained. Upon hearing this, Susan smirked disdainfully. "Why not just stay at your parents' house forever? I don't want to see your parasitic face around here anyway. I bet even Kevin's had enough of you." "You don't need to come back to this house anymore," she sneered. Her harsh words surprisingly brought me a sense of relief. "All right then, take care," I replied calmly, and returned to my parents' house. They welcomed me with open arms, providing the peace and comfort I needed during this time. A month later, Kevin came to my parents' house with exciting news. "I finally got the green light from work to transition to remote work permanently, and I found us a new place to live," he announced. "That's fantastic," I exclaimed. Thoughtfully, Kevin had rented an apartment close to my parents' home, making it easier for us to start our new life there. He then terminated the lease on the room Susan had been staying in and finalized our move to the new apartment. Susan was clearly unsettled by these developments and called me in a panic. "Hey, Michelle, where are you?" "I'm at our new place with Kevin," I responded. "New place? Where?" Susan's voice sounded urgent and somewhat panicked. "I'll let you know in time, but I have to be honest, the lease here is being canceled and everything's being moved out. I can't stay here anymore," I explained calmly, emphasizing the fresh start Kevin and I were making. "Kevin said he's cutting ties with me? He doesn't want to talk to me anymore?" she asked, her voice cracking. Yes, we're starting fresh somewhere else, I added, trying to make her understand the finality of our decision. So, you were just pretending to be nice to stay here, huh? This was your plan all along? Susan accused me of misunderstanding my intentions. Susan accused sharply, because you couldn't make any money from selling the house you got from Jack, right? How did you find out? I asked, surprised by her knowledge. You were telling the neighbors how frustrated you were that the house your husband left had no value, then suddenly it was up for sale. People just can't keep quiet about things like that. Give me Kevin back. I'm that kid's parent, so I have the right to live with him. As I've said before, he doesn't want to see you, and I won't pressure him into something he's uncomfortable with, I responded calmly. Upon hearing this, Susan's temper flared. Who do you think you are, acting all high and mighty when you're just a broke, freeloading, plain wife? That's not a nice thing to say, but it's true, she snapped. Well, I don't think our paths will cross much in the future, so it doesn't concern me, I replied calmly. But let me clarify something. Alongside my full-time job, I also have a side gig, and I actually earn more than Kevin, I continued. Oh, really? What's this side gig? Susan asked skeptically. I initially studied web design, so I've been taking on projects in that field. With both my full-time salary and freelance work, I'm bringing in about $10,000 a month, I explained. What? That much? That's more than Jack used to make. Susan was taken aback by my financial situation, clearly not expecting that the wife she had underestimated was earning that much. But none of this concerns you. Kevin has cut ties with you, and I'll be distancing myself even further, I asserted firmly. Wait a minute, if you're making that kind of money, maybe you could lend me a hand, Susan suggested hopefully. I didn't hesitate. I ended the call and blocked her number. It was a relief to expose Susan's true intentions and leave her feeling regretful. Knowing I wouldn't have to deal with her again brought me a sense of peace. Susan was now completely out of the loop about our lives. She didn't know where my parents lived or where I worked. With Kevin working from home and our new address kept private, the chances of her finding us were incredibly slim. We learned through the grapevine that Susan had always had a problem with overspending, and any inheritance left by Jack had quickly dwindled to nearly nothing. She had tried to sell the house but only received low offers, which further compounded her financial difficulties. Despite these setbacks, her old habits persisted. A neighbor from our old neighborhood contacted Kevin, sharing that Susan's spending habits hadn't changed. She relied heavily on payday loans, which had plunged her deeper into debt. She had even resorted to asking neighbors for loans, though without any success, which only worsened her financial woes. It seemed like karma was finally catching up with her. Meanwhile, Kevin and I were living a peaceful life, blissfully free from any disruptions from Susan. We split our time between our own home and my parents' place as we prepared for the arrival of our child. With the baby on the way, we were excited about the future and looked forward to nurturing our family and cherishing every moment together. This newfound peace was something we treasured deeply, knowing the chaos that had once surrounded us.